The stars bent and twisted as the massive fleet tore through space itself. One by one, 200 warships emerged from the darkness at the edge of Earth's solar system. Each vessel stretched nearly 3 kilometers long, their hulls covered in armor that had survived 1,000 battles across 1,000 worlds. Fleet Commander Zarthok stood on the bridge of his flagship, his 4 eyes scanning the tactical display. Before him floated a blue and green planet, the 847th world on the Krell Dominion's harvest list. His mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. This would be easy. Begin standard assessment protocol, Zarthok commanded. His crew worked efficiently. They had done this so many times before. The Krell had conquered worlds for 3,000 years. They knew exactly how to break a civilization's will to fight. The assessment data flowed across the screens. Zarthok read it with growing amusement. The planet's inhabitants called themselves humans. They had barely reached their own moon. Their ships couldn't even leave their small solar system. They had primitive nuclear weapons that might destroy their own cities, but would bounce harmlessly off Krell shields. Best of all, the humans were divided. Hundreds of nations, all suspicious of each other. No unified command. No planetary defense force. They would panic and argue while the Krell took everything they wanted. Send the standard surrender terms, Zarthok ordered. Give them 72 hours to comply. Make sure every government receives the message. On Earth, the message arrived simultaneously at every military installation, every government building, every communications hub. The screens filled with images of the Krell fleet. The translation was perfect, calculated to inspire maximum fear. People of Earth, you have been selected for harvest by the Krell Dominion. You have 72 hours to surrender all weapons, all resources, and all resistance. Submit peacefully, and you will be allowed to serve the Dominion. Resist and your cities will burn. This is your only warning. Within minutes, every major city erupted in chaos. People fled into the streets. Stock markets crashed. Emergency meetings convened in every capital city around the world. At a secret military base deep beneath the Swiss Alps, world leaders gathered via secure video conference. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and intelligence chiefs filled the screens. Their faces showed the same expression. Terror. General Morrison of the United States military presented the analysis his teams had prepared. We've run every simulation. Our best-case scenario gives us a 0.2% chance of destroying even one of their ships. Our entire nuclear arsenal, launched simultaneously, would not penetrate their shields. We have no defense. We have no countermeasure. We have nothing. The room fell silent. Several leaders openly wept. Others sat frozen, unable to process the information. The Chinese premier spoke first. Then we negotiate for the best surrender terms possible. We save what lives we can. They don't negotiate. The British Prime Minister replied bitterly. The intelligence analysis is clear. They've done this to 846 other worlds. They take everything. Resources, technology, people. What they don't take, they destroy. Then we fight, said the Russian president. We die with honor. We die uselessly, General Morrison corrected. And we take our children and our entire species with us. The argument continued for hours. Surrender or fight. Quick death or slow slavery. No good options. No hope. Then a quiet voice interrupted the debate. Excuse me. May I speak? Everyone turned to look at the small video screen in the corner. An elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes looked back at them. She wore a simple business suit with a UN identification badge. Who are you? Demanded the American president. Dr. Sarah Chen. I work in the UN Archives Division. I've spent the last 6 hours searching through classified historical files. I believe I've found something important. General Morrison frowned. Dr. Chen, with respect, this is a military crisis. Historical archives aren't going to help us. Please. Sarah said firmly. Just give me 5 minutes. If I'm wrong, you can go back to planning our extinction. Something in her voice made them listen. Perhaps it was desperation. Perhaps it was the calm certainty in her eyes. The American president nodded. Sarah took a deep breath. In 1977, we launched 2 space probes called Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. Everyone knows they carried golden records with messages for alien civilizations. Music, greetings in different languages, images of Earth. Yes, someone interrupted impatiently. We know this. How does it help? Because that's not all they carried. Sarah continued. She pulled up documents on her screen, showing them to the council. These are classified files from that era. The Voyager project had a secret component, known only to a handful of people. The documents showed meeting notes, technical specifications written in mathematical formulas no one recognized, and coordinates pointing to a specific location in deep space. An anonymous benefactor approached world governments in 1976, Sarah explained. This benefactor provided coordinates and an encryption key. They told us to hide a message in the golden records, encoded using mathematics we didn't understand. The benefactor said this message was a distress beacon address. They said we should only activate it if humanity faced total extinction. Activate it how? Asked the Chinese premier, leaning forward. By sending a specific radio signal to those coordinates, using the encryption key. The benefactor warned us it would come at a terrible cost, but they also said it was our only insurance policy. Sarah's hands trembled slightly. The benefactor said that if we ever truly needed help, someone would answer. Did we ever try to contact them? Someone asked. Intelligence agencies have monitored those coordinates for decades. Nothing has ever answered. Many people thought it was a hoax or a mistake. Sarah looked directly at the camera. But what if it wasn't? What if someone is actually listening? We have 71 hours left. Do we take the chance? The debate that followed was fierce. Some called it superstition and desperation. Others pointed out they had literally nothing to lose. In the end, as the clock ticked down and hope faded, humanity made its choice. They would send the signal. The world's most powerful radio telescopes aligned toward the coordinates from 1977. The encryption key, preserved for 50 years, was entered into the transmission system. Every major government participated, pooling their resources for this one desperate act. At exactly midnight, Greenwich Mean Time, Earth sent its cry for help into the darkness. The response came in 7 minutes. A single message, in perfect English, appeared on every screen that had sent the signal. Confirmed. Debt collection authorized. Stand clear. The message hung on the screens like a verdict. 7 words that raised more questions than they answered. Debt collection authorized. What debt? Who was collecting? Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her computer in the UN archives bunker. Her hands shook as she typed commands, pulling up more classified files from 1977. There had to be more information. There had to be an explanation. Around the world, the emergency council remained connected. Nobody spoke. They were all thinking the same thing. Help was coming. But at what price? Dr. Chen, the American president, said carefully. What exactly did we just agree to? Sarah scrolled through decades-old documents. I'm looking for more details now. The files are heavily redacted. But there's a reference here to something called the Concordat Protocol. She found a folder marked with the highest security classification. Her access codes barely allowed her to open it. Inside were meeting transcripts from a secret gathering in Geneva, Switzerland, in September 1976. I'm reading a transcript now, Sarah said. Representatives from 12 nations met with someone they only refer to as the benefactor. No physical description, no name. But the benefactor offered humanity a deal. What kind of deal? The Russian president demanded. Sarah read aloud from the document. The benefactor told them that in March 1977, A cosmic event would pass through our solar system. They called it a quantum resonance cascade. The transcript says, "This phenomenon destroys developing civilizations by disrupting atomic bonds. It's invisible, undetectable with our technology, and 100% fatal." "I've never heard of such a thing," said a scientific advisor from Japan. "Neither had they," Sarah replied. But the benefactor provided mathematical proof. The scientists at the meeting couldn't fully understand it, but they recognized it as legitimate advanced physics. The benefactor offered to provide coordinates that would guide our Voyager probes through a safe path, creating a protective field around Earth as they traveled. The resonance cascade would pass harmlessly. "And in exchange?" asked the British Prime Minister quietly. Sarah's voice dropped. "In exchange, if humanity ever called for help against an extinction-level threat, the benefactor's people would answer, and humanity would owe them one equivalent favor to be collected at a time of their choosing." The silence was heavy. They had just signed a blank check to an unknown power. "Did it work?" someone asked. "The protection in 1977? "We're still here," Sarah pointed out. "We never detected any cosmic event because the protection worked. We never knew we were saved." General Morrison pulled up astronomical data from 1977. His team had been searching historical records. There was something strange in March 1977. Several satellites experienced unexplained power fluctuations. Magnetic field readings showed anomalies. At the time, scientists couldn't explain it. The data was classified and forgotten. "So this benefactor saved us once," said the Chinese premier. "And now we've called them for help again. But who are they?" Before anyone could answer, every screen in the command center flickered. New data poured in from space monitoring stations. The Krell fleet was moving into position around Earth. Commander Zarthok was preparing for humanity's surrender or destruction. But something else was happening at the edge of the solar system. Space itself was opening, not like the crude tears the Krell ships had made. This was different. Precise. Surgical. Reality folded along mathematical lines that human scientists couldn't begin to understand. 3 vessels emerged. The word ship seemed inadequate to describe them. Each was easily 50 kilometers long, shaped like impossible geometric crystals that hurt to look at directly. They didn't reflect light so much as bend it around themselves. They existed in 3 dimensions, but somehow suggested more. Next to these vessels, the entire Krell fleet looked like toys. Aboard the Krell flagship, alarms shrieked. Commander Zarthok stumbled as his ship's systems went haywire. The tactical display showed readings that made no sense. Energy signatures off the scale. Mass readings that violated known physics. "What is that?" Zarthok demanded, his voice cracking for the first time in his military career. His science officer's hands trembled over the controls. "Commander, I don't know. Their technology is so far beyond ours that our sensors can barely register it. It's like trying to measure a star with a candle." "All ships, battle formation," Zarthok ordered. "Charge all weapons." But even as he gave the command, he felt something he had never experienced in 3,000 years of conquest. Fear. The 3 vessels moved through space without visible propulsion. They simply were in one location, then were in another, as if the concept of distance meant nothing to them. Then they broadcast on every frequency simultaneously. The message reached Earth, the Krell fleet, and every listening post within 100 light-years. The voice was unlike anything humans had ever heard. It sounded like mathematics given sound, like music made from physics itself, but it spoke in perfect English, and in perfect Krell, and in perfect versions of 800 other languages at the same time. "This is the Axiom Concordat. Your distress beacon has been received, Earth. The terms of the 1977 agreement are now active. On Earth, billions of people heard the message." In the UN bunker, Sarah Chen felt tears running down her face. They had answered. They were real. The Axiom Concordat continued speaking. Commander Zarthok, of the Krell Dominion. You have violated Concordat-protected territory. Earth is under our jurisdiction. You have one opportunity to withdraw your forces and return to your home system. Zarthok stared at the display. Rage and fear warred in his mind. The Krell Dominion bowed to no one. They were the conquerors. They were the strong. I don't know who you are, Zarthok transmitted back. But the Krell Dominion fears no one. Earth will be harvested as planned. If you interfere, you will be destroyed along with them. He turned to his weapons officer. Target the nearest vessel. Full power. Fire everything. 200 Krell warships opened fire simultaneously. Their weapons were terrible and beautiful. Fusion beams that could vaporize mountains. Kinetic missiles that hit with the force of nuclear explosions. Quantum torpedoes that phased through normal matter. Enough firepower to sterilize a dozen planets. The Axiom Concordat ships didn't even activate shields. The weapons simply stopped existing. Every beam, every missile, every torpedo ceased to be. The matter was converted directly to energy and absorbed into the Axiom vessels like water into sand. Not destroyed, not deflected, simply unmade. Impressive display, the Axiom voice said calmly. Now observe the difference between your power and ours. One of the Axiom ships pulsed with soft blue light. A single Krell warship, 3 kilometers of armor and weapons, began to come apart. Not explosively, not violently. It simply deconstructed at the molecular level. Metal became atoms, became energy. The crew vanished. Teleported away. In 30 seconds, the warship was gone. You have one opportunity remaining, the Axiom stated. Choose. In the UN bunker, Sarah Chen watched in awe and terror. Humanity was saved. But they had just learned that there were powers in the universe that made the Krell look primitive, and humanity now owed them a favor. Commander Zarthok watched his warship dissolve into nothing. His 4 eyes widened until they hurt. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Krell had never retreated. They had never surrendered. They had never lost. But they had also never faced anything like this. All ships, fall back, he whispered. Commander? His second officer stared at him in shock. Fall back, Zarthok roared. Retreat to home system. Now. The Krell fleet turned and ran. But the Axiom Concordat wasn't finished with them. Negative, the mathematical voice said calmly. You will not leave until terms are satisfied. Space around the Krell fleet became solid. Not a physical barrier, but something deeper. The ship's hyperspace drives activated, but went nowhere. They were trapped like insects in amber. What do you want? Zarthok asked, his voice broken. Justice, the Axiom replied. What happened next would be recorded in the history of 1,000 worlds. The Axiom Concordat dismantled the Krell fleet, piece by piece. Not with violence, not with anger, with the cold precision of a surgeon removing a disease. One by one, the warships were deconstructed. Weapon systems were carefully removed and converted to base elements. Armor plating was separated atom by atom. Shield generators were reduced to their component materials. Every piece of technology that could be used for conquest was unmade. The crews were not harmed. Each time a ship was deconstructed, its crew was teleported to a single remaining vessel. Krell warriors who had terrorized the galaxy found themselves packed together, forced to watch their mighty fleet reduced to clouds of harmless atoms. On Earth, every nation watched the display. Satellites and telescopes captured everything. Humanity saw what real power looked like. The Krell, who had seemed unstoppable, were being dismantled like children's toys. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the UN bunker, watching the screens with mixed emotions. Relief that Earth was saved. Wonder at the technology being displayed, and growing dread about what debt humanity had just incurred. Dr. Chen, a young aide, approached her nervously. The Axiom Concordat is requesting to speak with you specifically. Sarah's heart jumped. Me? Why me? They said you're the one who found the beacon. They want to meet with Earth's leadership, and they've requested you be present. 30 minutes later, Sarah sat in a hastily arranged conference room deep in the UN building. Around the table sat presidents, prime ministers, generals, and diplomats from every major nation, the most powerful people on Earth, all terrified of what came next. The room's lights dimmed. In the center of the table, a figure appeared. It looked humanoid, roughly. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But it was made of light, constantly shifting through colors that had no names. Its face suggested features without actually having any. When it moved, reality bent slightly around it. "Thank you for meeting with us," the figure said. Its voice was gentler now, almost kind. "I am designated as speaker for the Axiom Concordat. You may address me as such." 1. The American president found his voice first. "Thank you for saving our world. We are grateful beyond words." "Gratitude is premature," Speaker replied. "We did not act from kindness. We acted because of contract. Earth activated a debt agreement. That debt is now payable." Sarah felt her stomach drop. Everyone in the room tensed. Speaker continued. "In 1977, we saved your species from the quantum resonance cascade. The energy required to protect an entire planet from that phenomenon is substantial. The debt you owe is equivalent to that expenditure." "What do you want from us?" the Chinese premier asked carefully. Speaker tilted its head, a gesture that seemed almost human. "We don't know yet." The room fell silent. "You don't know?" General Morrison repeated. "Correct. The Concordat operates across timescales you cannot comprehend. We may require your assistance in 1 year, or in 1,000 years. When we call, you must answer. That is the agreement." The Russian president leaned forward. "What kind of assistance? We're a primitive species compared to you. What could we possibly offer?" "Why? Army." For the first time, Speaker's voice carried something like emotion. Sadness, perhaps, or longing. "You possess something we, and no other species we have encountered possess," Speaker said quietly. "You have hope." "Hope?" Sarah spoke without thinking. "How is hope valuable to beings like you?" Speaker turned to her, and Sarah felt the weight of ancient eyes studying her soul. "Dr. Chen, you found a 50-year-old message in dusty archives. You convinced the leaders of a divided world to trust in that message when every logical analysis said it was hopeless. You chose faith over certainty. That is hope." Speaker paused. "We Axiom exist in a universe of mathematics and certainty. We can predict outcomes with perfect accuracy. We can calculate all possibilities. But we have lost something in our precision. We have lost the ability to choose hope, when hope is illogical." The room absorbed this in stunned silence. "There are threats in this universe that cannot be defeated with technology alone," Speaker continued. "There are challenges that require beings who can look at impossible situations and choose to fight anyway. Who can inspire others to stand when all calculations say they should flee. We are preparing for such a challenge. When it comes, we will need species like yours." "When will you call this debt?" asked the British Prime Minister. "Unknown. Time moves differently for us. But when we call, you must answer with your full capability. If you refuse, the protection we provided in 1977 will be retroactively withdrawn." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Retroactively? But that's impossible. That was 50 years ago." Speaker's form pulsed with colors that hurt to perceive. "We exist partially outside your linear time. What was, what is, and what will be are all accessible to us. If you break the contract, we will unmake our intervention." The quantum cascade will have destroyed Earth in 1977. Your entire species will never have existed beyond that point. The threat was clear. Humanity had no choice. They could agree to the debt, or they could be erased from history. We understand, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her fear. We will honor the agreement. Speaker nodded slowly. Your species shows wisdom. This pleases us. It confirms our initial assessment that you were worth saving. The light figure began to fade, but Speaker had one more thing to say. Be aware that your action today will have consequences. The Krell fleet is being returned to their home system. We are forcing them to broadcast what happened here across all communication channels. Every civilization in this galaxy will know that Earth called the Concordat. Every species will know you are under our protection. Is that a good thing? General Morrison asked. That depends on your perspective, Speaker replied. Some will fear you. Some will seek alliance with you. Some will wonder what makes you special enough to warrant Concordat protection. Your quiet existence is over. Welcome to the galactic stage, humanity. And with that, Speaker vanished. The room erupted in noise. Questions, arguments, speculation. But Sarah sat quietly, staring at where Speaker had been. Earth was saved. But childhood was over. Humanity was now part of something vast and incomprehensible. And somewhere in their future, they would be called to pay a debt to the most powerful beings in the universe. She wondered if they would be ready when that call came. 6 months had passed since the Axiom Concordat saved Earth. The world had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the window of her new office in the UN Xeno-Diplomatic Division, a department that hadn't existed a year ago. Below her, the streets of New York teemed with activity. But now, scattered among the humans, walked beings from other worlds. The first aliens had arrived 3 months after the Krell's defeat. They came in small ships. Tentatively, carefully. They were species the Krell had enslaved. Species who had heard the broadcast of the Krell's humiliation and wanted to see Earth for themselves. Sarah's assistant, a young man named James Park, knocked on her door. Dr. Chen, the delegation from Theta Cygni is here for their meeting. Sarah nodded and straightened her suit. Even after 6 months, she still felt unprepared for her new role. She had been an archivist, content with dusty files and historical research. Now she was humanity's chief xenodiplomat, the face Earth presented to the galaxy. The Theta Cygnian delegation consisted of 3 insect-like beings, each about 2 meters tall with crystalline exoskeletons that refracted light in beautiful patterns. Their translator devices rendered their clicking language into English. Dr. Chen, their leader, spoke through the device. On behalf of the Theta Cygni collective, we again offer our gratitude. The Krell enslaved our people for 2 generations. When you summoned the Concordat, you freed not just yourselves, but 17 other species. We didn't know that would happen, Sarah admitted. We were just trying to survive. Intention matters less than outcome. The alien replied. We wish to propose a mutual defense pact with Earth. Together, our species could. I appreciate the offer, Sarah interrupted gently. But we're not ready for military alliances. We're still trying to understand basic galactic politics. This was the same conversation Sarah had every day with different species. Everyone wanted to ally with Earth. Everyone wanted to be associated with the planet that could summon the Concordat. But Sarah and Earth's leadership had decided on a careful path. They would build relationships slowly. They would learn before committing. After the meeting, Sarah walked to the newly established Galactic Affairs Center downtown. The building had been a museum 6 months ago. Now it served as neutral ground, where humans and aliens could meet, trade, and share information. In the main hall, she found General Morrison examining a holographic display of the local galactic region. The display was a gift from the Viridian Assembly, one of the older spacefaring civilizations. Still wrapping your head around it? Sarah asked. Morrison nodded. There are over 400 spacefaring civilizations within 1,000 light-years of Earth. 400. And we never knew any of them existed. OT. We were too primitive to notice, Sarah said. And too far off the main trade routes for anyone to bother with us. Until the Krell. Until the Krell, Sarah agreed. Morrison touched a control, and the display zoomed to show the Krell home system. Intelligence reports say the Krell Empire is collapsing. Without their fleet, their tributary species are rebelling. Civil war is breaking out across their territory. How do you feel about that? Sarah asked. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Honestly? Conflicted. They would have destroyed us without a second thought. But watching an entire civilization tear itself apart. He shook his head. The Krell submitted a petition to Earth last week. They're asking for humanitarian aid. Sarah's eyes widened. The Krell? Asking us for help? Specifically, they're asking for food shipments and medical supplies. Their production capacity was entirely military. Now that their war machine is dismantled, they can't feed their own people. What do you think we should do? I think, Morrison said slowly, that how we respond to this will define humanity's place in the galaxy more than anything else we do. The next day, Sarah sat in the UN Security Council chamber as representatives debated the Krell petition. The arguments were heated. They tried to enslave us, the Russian representative shouted. They've destroyed 846 civilizations. Why should we help them? Because we're better than they are? Replied the Brazilian representative. We have the opportunity to show the galaxy what humanity stands for. Mercy. Compassion. The belief that even our enemies deserve basic dignity. It's a trap, insisted the Chinese representative. The Krell are predators. The moment they recover, they'll attack again. The debate continued for hours. Sarah listened, thinking about everything she'd learned in the past 6 months. She had read the histories of a dozen different species. She had learned about the cycles of war and peace that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. She had seen what violence begat more violence. Finally, the Secretary General asked Sarah for her recommendation. She stood, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. The Concordat told us that we have hope, that we can choose to fight even when it's illogical. But hope isn't just about fighting. It's also about believing that enemies can become something better. She pulled up images on the main screen. Pictures of Krell children, hungry and afraid. Pictures of Krell cities, falling into chaos and starvation. These beings are not the warriors who came to conquer us. These are civilians who had no choice in their government's actions. If we let them starve, we become what we feared the Krell were, monsters who measure life by usefulness. She turned to face the council. I recommend we provide humanitarian aid. Food, medicine, but no military technology. We help them survive, and we show the galaxy that humans believe in second chances, that we believe people can change. The vote was close, but it passed. Earth would send aid to their former enemy. The news spread across the galaxy within days. The reaction was mixed. Some species praised humanity's mercy. Others thought humans were fools. But everyone was talking about Earth. 2 weeks later, Sarah received a private message. It came through the Voyager encryption channel, the same one that had first connected Earth to the Concordat. She opened it in her office, her hands shaking. The message was from speaker. Dr. Chen. We have been observing humanity's actions since our intervention. Your species chose mercy over vengeance when dealing with the Krell. You chose to help those who would have destroyed you. This choice was not logical. It was not strategically optimal. It was hope made manifest. The message continued. This confirms our initial assessment. When the quantum cascade threatened your world in 1977, we had a choice. Thousands of species faced similar threats that year. We could only save a fraction of them. We chose Earth because our probability calculations suggested your species possessed unique potential. Sarah felt tears forming. They had been selected, judged, found worthy, based on calculations she couldn't understand. Continue as you have, the message concluded. When we call upon you to honor your debt, you will understand why we chose you, why we invested resources in keeping humanity alive. The challenge we face will require exactly what you demonstrated with the Krell. The ability to extend hope to the seemingly hopeless. The message ended with a simple statement that chilled Sarah's blood. Prepare yourselves. The debt will be called sooner than you expect. What comes will test every species in this galaxy, and humanity will be at the center of it. What is not won? Won? And humanity? Sarah stared at the screen long after the message faded. Outside her window, Earth continued its daily rhythm. People walked streets alongside aliens. Ships from a dozen worlds docked at the new orbital platforms. Humanity had joined the galactic community, but a storm was coming. And somehow, the fate of the galaxy was going to rest on humanity's ability to hope when hope was impossible. She wondered if they were ready. Then she remembered the choice they'd made with the Krell. The choice to be better than their fear. Maybe they were ready. Or maybe they would learn to be. The call came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 year after the Axiom Concordat saved Earth. Sarah was in a meeting with representatives from the Viridian Assembly when every screen in the UN building went dark. Then, they all displayed the same message. The debt is called. All human leadership must assemble immediately. The Concordat will arrive in 6 hours. Sarah's heart stopped. Around the world, the same message appeared on every government system, every military installation, every major communications hub. The time had come. Within 2 hours, world leaders had gathered in the UN Security Council chamber. The room was packed with presidents, prime ministers, generals, and the new Xeno-Diplomatic Corps. Everyone wore the same expression. Fear, mixed with determination. General Morrison stood at the tactical display, his face grim. We've detected massive energy signatures at the edge of the solar system. Not just the 3 Concordat ships from last year, there are hundreds of vessels gathering. This is a fleet. A fleet for what? Demanded the French president. We're about to find out, Sarah said quietly. At exactly the 6-hour mark, the lights in the chamber dimmed. Speaker appeared in the center of the room, but different than before. Its form was more solid now, more urgent. Other figures appeared beside it, each made of light but suggesting different alien physiologies. Humanity. Speaker began without preamble. Thank you for assembling quickly. What we are about to tell you is known to only the oldest civilizations. It is the secret that the Concordat has kept for millions of years. The room was utterly silent. The universe is dying, Speaker said simply. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Not immediately, Speaker continued. Not in millions of years. But in approximately 2,000 of your years, a phenomenon will occur. We call it the final cascade. It is similar to the quantum resonance that threatened Earth in 1977, but infinitely larger. It will sweep through this entire galaxy, unmaking everything it touches. Stars, planets, civilizations, all will cease to exist. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Around the room, people stared in horror. The Concordat has spent millions of years searching for a solution. Another figure spoke, its voice like distant wind chimes. We have tried everything our mathematics can suggest. We have built shields the size of solar systems. We have attempted to redirect the cascade's path. Nothing works. The final cascade cannot be stopped by technology. Then what can stop it? Morrison asked, his military training keeping his voice steady. We don't know, Speaker admitted. And that is precisely the problem. We Concordat exist in mathematical certainty. We can calculate every possible outcome. Every solution we can imagine fails. The final cascade is mathematically inevitable. But you're here, Sarah said, realization dawning. You came to us. You said we have hope. Yes, Speaker turned to her. Hope is choosing to act when all logical analysis says action is futile. Hope is believing in possibilities that cannot be calculated. This is what we lack. This is what we need. A third Concordat figure spoke, its voice like deep ocean currents. Species that demonstrated the capacity for hope in desperate circumstances. Humanity is one of them. Together, you represent something we cannot calculate. The unpredictable variable. The British Prime Minister leaned forward. What exactly are you asking us to do? We are asking you to find a solution we cannot see, Speaker replied. We are gathering the greatest minds of 17 species in one location. Scientists, philosophers, artists, dreamers, beings who think in ways we cannot. Your task is to examine the final cascade data and propose solutions that defy our calculations. And if we can't? Asked the Chinese premier. Then everything ends, Speaker said flatly. Not just humanity, not just this galaxy. The final cascade will cascade through dimensions, unmaking reality itself across multiple universes. Everything that is, was, or ever will be, will cease to exist. The weight of those words crushed the room into silence. Sarah stood, her legs shaking but her voice clear. How much time do we have? 2,000 years until the cascade arrives. But the solution must be found and implemented within 1,000 years, or there will not be enough time to deploy it across the galaxy. Speaker paused. In galactic terms, that is no time at all. Morrison pulled up a star chart. Where will this gathering take place? We have constructed a station at the galactic core. It exists partially outside normal space-time, protected from all known threats. The 17 species will work there together. Each species will send their best minds. 1,000 individuals from each world. The room erupted in questions. How would they select people? How would they get there? What resources would be provided? Speaker answered each patiently. Finally, the American president asked the question everyone was thinking. Why didn't you tell us this from the beginning? Why the debt? Why the dramatic rescue? Speaker's form pulsed with colors that suggested sadness. Because hope must be earned, not demanded. We needed to see if humanity would choose mercy when given power. When you sent aid to the Krell despite everything they had done, you proved you possessed the quality we needed. Compassion in the face of logic. The ability to see possibilities beyond revenge and survival. And the other 16 species? Sarah asked. Each demonstrated similar qualities in their own ways. The Viridians chose to share their resources with refugees when their own world faced famine. The Theta Cygnians refused to abandon their colony when evacuation was the logical choice, and instead found an innovative solution. Every species we selected has shown the capacity to choose hope over calculation. A Concordat figure that hadn't spoken before materialized beside Speaker. Its voice resonated like countless crystals chiming together. Understand that this is not guaranteed to succeed. The probability of finding a solution to the final cascade is less than 0.3%. But 0.3% is infinitely more than zero, and zero is what our calculations give us. So we're a lottery ticket, Morrison said with dark humor. A desperate gamble. You are the only gamble possible, Speaker replied. Technology has reached its limit. Mathematics has reached its limit. What remains is the incalculable. Faith, creativity, hope, the things that make no sense to beings like us, but which have allowed species like yours to survive impossible situations throughout history. Sarah thought about everything humanity had overcome. Wars, plagues, near extinctions. Every time logic said they should have failed, humans had found a way. Not through superior strength or intelligence, but through sheer, stubborn refusal to give up. When do we start? She asked. Selected individuals will be contacted within 1 week. Transport will be arranged within 1 month. The work begins immediately upon arrival. Speaker's form began to fade. We know what we are asking is immense. We know the burden is terrible. But you were selected because you can bear it. One more question, Sarah said quickly. Why save us in 1977? Why invest in humanity before you even knew if we'd develop this hope you need? Speaker paused in its fading. Because the quantum cascade that threatened you then was the first test. We needed to see if humans would squander the gift of survival or make something meaningful from it. You built the Voyager probes. You sent messages to unknown stars. You reached outward with hope, even when you were alone in the dark. That told us everything we needed to know. We were always part of your plan, Sarah whispered. Not a plan. A hope of our own. The hope that somewhere in this vast universe, there existed beings who could see possibilities we could not. Speaker's voice grew faint. The debt is called. Humanity's payment is due. Save the universe, Dr. Chen. Save all of us. And then the Concordat was gone. The room exploded into motion. Plans needed to be made. People needed to be selected. Humanity had to prepare for the greatest challenge any species had ever faced. But Sarah stood still, thinking about the weight they now carried. The fate of reality itself rested on the slim hope that beings who should have been insignificant could somehow find answers that the oldest and wisest civilizations could not. She thought about the Voyager probes, floating through space with their messages of hope. She thought about choosing to help the Krell, when hate would have been easier. She thought about every impossible thing humanity had ever accomplished, and she smiled. We've saved the world before, she said to Morrison, who stood beside her. This time we just need to save everything. No pressure then, Morrison replied with grim humor. Sarah pulled up the data feeds already coming in from the Concordat. Mathematical formulas that would take lifetimes to understand. Energy readings from the approaching final cascade. The compiled knowledge of millions of years of advanced civilization, all saying the same thing. Impossible. Good thing we specialize in impossible, Sarah said. Outside, Earth continued its daily rhythm. People went to work. Children went to school. Life continued in all its messy, chaotic, hopeful glory. They didn't know yet that their species had just been handed the greatest responsibility in universal history. But they would learn. And they would rise to meet it. Because that's what humans did. They hoped when hope was illogical. They tried when trying was pointless. They believed in tomorrow, even when mathematics said there would be no tomorrow. The Concordat had chosen humanity not for their strength, but for their refusal to accept inevitable defeat. It was time to prove that choice was correct. The debt was called, and humanity would pay it or die trying. But dying had never been the human way. Not when there was even the smallest chance of survival. Not when there was hope.